Hello and welcome to another comedian's interview for my blog Arichcomiclife. My name is Richard Gill and my blog describes my experiences of watching over 800 comedians and counting over the last 46 years. My guest today is the wonderful Sikisa. Yay!
Yes! Yeah.
Hello!
Hello!
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you very much. It's lovely to see you, and thank you so much for doing this.
No, thank you for having me. This is absolutely lovely to be here with good old friends.
My pleasure. Well, we're going to talk about your comedy career over the next hour or so, and I'd like you to start by saying, how did you become a comedian in the first place?
So I became a comedian. So I basically worked in a pub for a number of years and still technically work there. That is called the Cavendish Arms in Stockwell, and they run Comedy Virgins. So I was working behind the bar.
Right.
And my manager, the landlord, Shirley, was like, "You're funny. Why don't you give it a go?" And I was like... And at the time, like, we had people like Dane Baptiste, Tom Ward coming through. So I knew all of those people from like seeing them on stage or like just being behind the bar and just having banter. And then I tried it out. And my first routine was me talking about lions for 5 minutes, which on reflection wasn't that funny. I remember the concept of the story, or like me ranting, I should say, more or less on stage, was I didn't appreciate the fact that lions are kept in zoos, and that whenever they get attack someone of the public at a zoo, they're always the ones that are affected. I'm like, it's not their fault, they're lions. Like, of course they're going to kill someone. They are lions. Stop keeping them in cages. So I remember my rant was about that for like 5 minutes. And then I was like, oh, this is not really for me. And then I did continue to try and give it goes and like go on stage and rant. But then I didn't really properly think I could do it till maybe like 2017. And that's when I was like, oh, we can give this a go. And then I was I was doing the sound for Comedy Virgins at that time. I was like, I see like 20 comedians during a show.
Yeah.
And like three or quarter of them were crap. Not in a bad way, but like, not in a bad way, but like, you would be like, oh, you're just doing it for the fun of it. They wasn't actually putting effort into it. And I was like, I could probably do that. And then that's when I kind of was like, let's write down some jokes and then just give us a go.
2017, was it? When you first
started? 2017.
Yeah. I know Comedy Virgins very well. I know the Cavendish Arms at Stockwell very well. I used to go there all the time. It's every Tuesday night, isn't it?
Well, it started off being every Tuesday night, and then it expanded to Monday and Tuesdays.
Right.
And then it grew to Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and I used to MC there on a Wednesday.
Right.
After I took over from Paul Langton, who left. And then over the last, obviously before lockdown, couple of years, they've kind of like expanded to do like Saturdays, Sundays, afternoons. So basically, if there's like a free day that the Cavendish has without a booking, they'll just put in a Comedy Virgins, and they realise that people will still come down because there's so many comics in London. So
tell me about it. That's why I'm writing my blog. I've got the last count, it was 842.
Yeah.
I'm hoping by the end of it I'll get over 1,000, because the first show I ever saw was in 1975, and it was Les Dawson in Scarborough, and it was fantastic. And then I saw Tommy Cooper the year later, and I was hooked. So, but I've been in London for 28 years.
Yeah.
And I used to go to the Comedy Store a lot, and just wonderful stuff. Wonderful time.
Yeah, because it's weird, like, obviously that you've done like so many venues, and like when I was starting out, I hadn't seen a lot of like mainstream comedy. I used to go to quite a lot of urban comedian shows, but like I've never seen many. Like I never had been to the Comedy Store.
Yeah.
Never, and had Cavendish was the only comedy version, was the only real place that I saw comedy.
What I love about places like the Cavendish Arms is they, as you say, you get about 20 comedians on, and they've got 5 minutes. And so the comedian who goes on normally goes with a friend, and I'm normally the friend. So I sit there and I listen, and it's great, and I have a wonderful time. Similar to Birdies, that's the other one I go to, where Brendan O'Donoghue is the compere there, and Jimmy Bird runs it. And a friend of mine who started out in comedy, he got a comedy course, and he asked me to go along and be his 5-minute friend, and I sat there for 10 shows listening to the same jokes, but I was laughing in all the right places. And he said, "Oh, you're comedy gold, Rich, you really are."
Yeah, you're the best type of +1. You're the best type.
So you're on stage doing your comedy. What do you mainly like to talk about? Do you have any themes, or do you have anything that you specifically want to talk about?
When I'm on stage, so it's normally, I normally end up talking about things that relate to me in my life. So that is normally like my family, the fact that I'm still like not married, but all my friends are married and I have kids. Talk about dick quite a lot. Talk about dick quite a lot. I talk about immigration because I'm associated with that. I talk about race, obviously, being a person of colour. So that's my dad in the background just coughing.
Hello, Daddy.
So I just talk about things that I can relate to, or that I think people can relate to as well. And especially, obviously, being a woman, person of colour, I think it's important to talk about certain things on stage, but obviously not to lecture.
Of course, yeah.
I think my aspect of like stand-up is to talk about things that are fun, and like I think my type of stand-up is, I'm not really clever with any of my jokes. It's more just me just talking about stuff that I want to talk about. I'm like, let's just get on stage and talk about some stuff, shall we? Yay!
Well, I've seen you many times, and I love your confidence, and I love the ranting, and it's intelligent as well as very, very funny. So I do wish you every success, because I think you're certainly, they say one to watch, but I've been watching you for about 2 or 3 years, and you just get better and better and better as you go along.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Did you ever find it difficult at all to break through into comedy? Because some comedians they all start off with different careers, and then they say to themselves, like you did, "Oh, I could have a go at doing this." Did you ever find it difficult at all? Were you nervous on stage? Were you not very confident?
I used to be a dancer, so I used to dance quite a lot when I was younger. So performance is something that I can allude, and a lot of people love to comment that my acts or stand up is more performance than material, if you want to put it that way, which is fine. I mean, you can't teach personality. You can't teach personality. But so performance, I can always sell something. My problem when I started doing stand-up, and especially like getting into it properly, was I'd never used to write a full joke. Like I would just had an idea, and I would always just try and riff around the idea until it kind of worked, and then that would be my joke. And it wasn't until like a year and a half, 2 years ago, that I started actually writing jokes, like full jokes. And obviously, like, the joke would never come out the same way that I wrote it, but it was the effort that I had to put in to write a joke. People also, like, you mentioned that I appear to be confident on stage. I'm quite a shy person. I'm quite isolated in general because I'm the only child. So I always grew up quite like a shy person. Like I can have conversations with people and I can make friends and we can have banter, but I'm generally quite a shy person. I'm not really good with words. So being on stage and doing like public speaking was something that was always going to be a challenge for me. And I do get nervous, especially if it's like a place that I've never done before. I always get nervous because I'm like, I don't know how this is going to work out. I don't know, obviously, the type of audience. I don't know how they're going to take me. But normally, once it's done the first time, I get less nervous. Like, I can do angel comedy. Yeah. Even if it goes badly, I can do that. I can do the Cav really badly. The first time I did Always Be Comedy Live, I was a nervous wreck. I was like, I don't know how this is going to go. Even though they've seen me online, it's different when you see me in person. So you just never know, like, how people are going to react to you. So I always get a little bit nervous before a show that I've never done before. But once I get out of the way and I know that I can do it, like, the audience will appreciate the jokes. And me, I should say, it's probably not to do with the jokes, it's more to do with me as a person. Right. If they accept me as a person in a venue at this, and people are laughing, then I normally am fine with my nerves after that. I can just go back and just do it again because I know that what I do works at that venue.
Are you saying that once you start your act, then the nerves go and you're fine, or do you have to wait a minute or two to see what the audience is going to be like, or what?
I have to, like, get through it. Depends on, obviously, the set that you're doing. Yeah. And obviously, like, if it's a place that I've never done before, then we have to bang out a gold joke to make sure that your nerves are on par. Yeah. And once that joke hits, then I'm normally fine.
Then you're fine. So, yeah. It's interesting because I always remember I was on a training course once, and they said to me, you need to teach somebody how to do something, and you'll be recorded doing this, and you have to go up and do public speaking and all the rest of it. So I thought, all right, I'm going to teach the person the only card trick I know. And I'd done it for years and years and years, and I stood up on stage and I forgot it. It all went wrong, and I forgot it. Yeah. And I thought I was very confident beforehand, but then I went to pieces because it all went wrong, you know. So so it's interesting. It's an interesting one, confidence, but it's a reason why I write the blog, because my blog is an enthuse for all the people who get up there and actually have a go. You know, it's a wonderful thing to watch when it's done well, and you do it very, very well. You know, so
thank you. Just give me the compliments. Give me.
Yeah.
No, but I would like even at Comedy Virgins, because obviously you will see people that come there and do comedy for the very first time, and I do think it's one of the best places to do it.
Yeah.
People, you can see that some people are nervous. You can see them beforehand, like walking up and down, like going through their set before the show actually starts. And you can, if you look into it, you can see like some people are like anxious, nervous, and some people's sets may not go the best. But I always tell people, like, you should do it at least once and always just come back and do it again, because it is infectious. There was a point where I didn't think I could do it and I wanted to give it up, but then you realize that it is quite infectious to like make people laugh and to have people like you and have the confidence to be able to like be like, yeah, I can go out and tell some jokes, especially like I say, as a black woman in this day and age. Like, I very much like, I am going to talk until you accept me.
When you were on stage at some point in your comedy career, when was there a point where you thought to yourself, yes, I can do this and I can try and make a career out of this?
It probably was the BBC competition. Before then, I was kind of like, people were like, oh, that's just a girl from the Cavendish. People never really took me seriously. I don't even think today some people still take me seriously in terms of comedy. But like, I just kind of was like, I entered the competition. I don't like competitions anyway. Competitions give me massive anxiety because you're like, people are there to judge you. It's the same with like industry shows. People are there judging you, whereas at a normal stand-up show, people are there to enjoy you. and that's different.
Yeah.
And I don't like the feeling of being judged. So like competitions already give me anxiety. And I remember doing the heat with Hugh Davies, he's obviously a lovely friend of mine, and Daniel Aldrich, who's an amazing writer. And we all got through. And I remember this is interesting. Never thought that was going to happen. And then going up to Edinburgh and doing the semi-final, I actually lost my voice in the semi-final. I was in the same semi-final as Heidi Reagan, and she also was ill in that semi-final. So we're both sitting there really, really ill. And I remember I was doing my rap, and I remember losing my voice. I can hear it cracking halfway through the rap. And I remember obviously completing the set, but coming off stage and just bursting out in tears because I was like, that was absolutely horrendous.
Oh dear.
And then they announced, I was the last one to be announced that I was going through to the final. And I was like, okay, this is a bit crazy. Like I went from like tears of like sadness, thinking that I messed up. And I didn't realize how much it meant to me until I was like in that position.
Yeah.
So I went from tears of like sadness into tears of joy. I literally was like, I'm going to the final. Oh my God.
Yeah.
And like Edinburgh, to like have that situation in Edinburgh was absolutely amazing because you're surrounded by other comics, you're surrounded by your comic friends. And I was actually like overjoyed, especially because I was in the final with like Heidi, who I know very well. And some other amazing comics as well, who I knew. It was really a blessing for me. And then I was like, oh, I could actually, then it was the final. I was like, oh, we might have to do something with this now. Like people are like, you're in the final, you need to take this a little bit more seriously now. And a true story. So I was going, at the time I entered the competition, I was going by my nickname. A lot of people still call me Twix, that I started out with. Like Helen Bauer still calls me Twix. And she keeps forgetting, like, if I'm doing a show with her and she's emceeing, that she needs to call me Sikisa. But I nearly entered the competition called Twix. And then I was like, it's the BBC, you can't enter it with like such a weird name. So I entered it with my real name. Yeah. And throughout the competition, I kept annoying the producers by just going back and forth with my name changes. Like I was like, one day I was like, I'm just gonna call myself Twix, and then I emailed them. I was like, sorry to bother you, but can we just change the name again? So I thought, so it kept going back and forth with my name, but it was literally the competition and being in that final that led me to be like, you can actually do this. Like, and then finding out that I won People's Choice for that competition was like a great.
It's interesting because I've written down the competitions that you've been in, and it's interesting what you say. You were a finalist for the BBC New Comedy Award in 2017. You were a regional finalist for the Funny Women competition in 2018, and you were a finalist for the Get Up Stand Up competition in 2019. It is interesting your take on competitions, because do you think that if you appear in a competition, does that give you kudos for taking your career further, or is it a hindrance? Or
I entered the BBC competition because I wanted to see if I could do it.
Right.
I wanted to give myself a challenge to see whether I could be seen as funny by if you want to consider it industry. And that was a big platform. And then entering the other competition, obviously Funny Women as a woman in comedy, it's kind of like the go-to competition to enter. And I have entered it 3 times, and each year I've ended up being in the semi-final or regional final. And I'm like, just give me the final, for God's sake. Just give me the final. So that's happened 3 years in a row. And then with the Get Up competition, I entered it mainly because I wanted them to notice me. I wanted a spot at the comedy club.
Right.
And the competition only seemed to be the way in. So with competitions, sometimes it can be like beneficial for you to do it for your confidence. For example, the BBC competition for me.
Yeah.
But other times competitions are good for you to be seen by producers, promoters, so they know your how your style of comedy is and whether you could fit in with their comedy club.
Yeah.
So now, and obviously it's like you can use it for clout as well.
Yeah.
Same with like BBC is on my CV because I'm like, that's a big thing to be in the final.
Sure.
So that's on my CV. And people look at it and will be like, oh, you're in the BBC final, that's really cool. But at the same time, you can use it for clout to be like, I've done all these places, I've entered this competition, end up in the final for this and this and this. And people will be like, okay, you might have some credibility to be a decent comic. I might give you a spot.
Yeah, yeah. Well, congratulations for getting so far in all of them, because it's so deserved. You also host 2 female-based shows, the comedy chat show Girl Code and the annual charity show Stand Up for Women, which I saw last year and I thought was brilliant. How did these shows come about?
So Stand Up for Women is obviously a charity show I've been running for about 6 years now.
Yeah.
And I run it for Solace Women's Aid every single year because that's where I'm technically employed by. So I work there. And when I first joined, we had to like do fundraising as a team. And then I was like, well, I'm a comedian. I know a lot of funny women. And at that time as well, about 6 years ago, female comics, it was still very much like we were the only ones on a bill. And all that kind of talk was going out there. And I wanted to be like, well, not only am I going to create awareness for Solace and domestic abuse, but I'm going to use it as a positive for the fact that you can have a lineup of all women and it still be an awesome show.
Sure, yeah, yeah.
So the first year I crazily did 5 shows in 2 weeks.
Wow.
And I was like, yeah, it was crazy the first year. And I was like, not doing that again. So then it just turned out to be an annual show. But yeah, last year was obviously the pandemic in 2020. And I decided I was going to do an extra show at Christmas when we were allowed to. And actually the show that you turned up was the last day that we were allowed to be out before the lockdown, the third lockdown.
Yeah.
So I remember that, and it was a great show because we had Fern Brady on it, Maria Shahata was on it, Rosie Jones was on it. Yeah. It was a great show. So that's the reason why I've got Stand Up for Women, to not only create awareness for like female comics and to prove that we are funny, because I feel like that's still a conversation, but also to create awareness about domestic abuse, which is obviously a big topic in light of the pandemic as well. But Girl Code is a comedy chat show, which I didn't have. Okay, I wouldn't lie. I was not confident doing a 45-minute show in Edinburgh.
Right.
In 2019. Something happened during that time and I kind of felt defeated. I don't remember what, but like something happened. And I decided instead of like going up and like, because Edinburgh's quite expensive as it is. Yeah. Instead of going up for the full run and doing like a 45-minute show that I didn't have my heart in, I would go up and do a format show, which is a mixed bill show called Girl Code, which is I plugged as a comedy chat show as if Loose Women was funny. That's how I plugged it. And I went up with the show and it got a great reception from the audience that came. We did like a lunchtime show and it was great. We had like people, I obviously had mixed bill shows, had different guests every single day, but also we would talk about a different topic every single day, whether it was topical or not. And then the audience would give us some questions that we would try and solve. Because my theory was if the government can't solve the problems, maybe the women can.
Exactly, yes.
So we did that, and it was a fun show, and I decided that I was going to try and make it into like a thing. So I started doing the show regularly before lockdown. I did like 3 and then lockdown happened. Then I did them. Then I tried to put them online, but I'm not really good with online stuff, putting them out myself. So yeah.
I'm going off my own steam with this, and I've had loads of problems with it, but we seem to be all right now. My view is that I think it's wonderful what you're doing, but I think if a human is funny, whether they're a man or a woman, then they're funny. and there is place for everybody. There are so many brilliant female comics that are over the last 10 years are just flying. You got Kerry Godliman, Jem Brister, Vix Layton's coming up, Joe Brand, of course, on and on and on and on. Sarah Millican. There's loads of them, So if you're funny, you're funny. That should go on my gravestone, I think.
It should do. It should do. You should have your own one. Just be like, you're funny. You're funny.
There's very few people that don't make me laugh. Right. You previewed your debut solo show and were nominated for Best Newcomer at the online Leicester Comedy Festival in 2020. Can you describe your writing process, please, and where you get your ideas from?
So the show I did in 2020 feels like ages ago.
Yeah.
I was actually quite shocked it got nominated because I turned up an hour. So the show idea was revolved around an incident that happened, and when I turned up at the Leicester Comedy Festival, I had one of my comedy friends was teching it, which was lovely to see. But also most of the audience was men, and I was like, "Oh, this is going to be interesting." And I was doing that festival, and then a week later I was doing the Votes Festival, and I didn't enjoy how I felt after doing the Leicester. I didn't think anyone liked the show.
Right.
And then I did the Votes Festival the week after, and I enjoyed that way better. But it's all a learning curve anyway. But then I found out I got nominated, and I was like, oh, okay, this is interesting. Someone must have really liked it. Thanks. Which gave me the confidence to be like, okay, the show actually is a nice work in progress show, and you can obviously improve on it. But in terms of writing, I'm not a very good writer.
Right.
I tried to push myself during lockdown and write sitcom scripts and write. Obviously, I did my new version of my debut show at this year's Leicester, which also got nominated. Yay!
Congratulations.
So that's 2 years in a row this show has been nominated, even though I've changed it in the last year, because obviously it's not going to be the same show. It's evolved, and it probably will evolve by the time I debut it again. But my writing process is what's happening around at the time. What do I want to talk about? What do I feel needs to be talked about? And what do I find funny? So the concept of the original show, I'm a 7, was that I didn't think that anyone was perfect, let alone myself. There's flaws with a lot of people, my friends will be like, I'm a quadruple threat because of the things that I do in my life, like comedy, my day job, just being, I managed the bar, the Cavendish at one point. So I was doing several things, and people were like, you're a quadruple threat. And I was like, no one's perfect. So the concept of the show was around that. And obviously it had old jokes in it and new jokes that I written specifically for the show. And then I evolved it this year to the show Bad Guy, which is all set in a party.
Right.
So the show is set in a party that I went to, and I meet different characters and I interact with them, and different subjects comes out of the interactions, like race, immigration, my name, obviously.
It's a good
me
idea.
being a woman. So I think the new version of it is a better one, and I think I'm never a person that learns from reading, or I can't I've never been academically smart in terms of reading and learning that way. I've always been a person that learns from doing. Right. So I have to do things practically in order for me to learn. And that's what I think lockdown has helped me do, because I didn't not stop gigging. I carried on gigging, and it pushed me to write new material because we're still gigging. We can't just be doing the same 2020 set. We can't be doing that. A 2019 set. We can't be doing that. We need to evolve. So that's what.
So do you think that if you were doing a 10-minute routine or a 20-minute routine, would you approach that differently to writing a full hour or 45 minutes show?
Yeah, I would. I find, with a whole show, what I've learned is you've got to have a structure. Obviously a lot of shows have got a sub-story at the end, or something happens and there's a twist.
Yeah.
Or I don't even think you have to have that for a show. I just think you have to have a structure where even if you're combining all the jokes that you've ever done in your life, it has to flow. So it feels like it's one continuous story.
Of course, yeah.
Whereas if I'm doing a 10 or 20 minute set, then we could talk about anything. I can just do, I could do this and we'll be fine. And obviously because I do comparing as well. I am MC. I can just riff with the audience members and be comfortable doing that.
Very, very good at bantering with the crowd, which is a massive asset to be a great comedian.
Yeah, I like to have a little fun with the audience sometimes.
Yeah. Well, it puts them at ease because they get on with you, and it puts you at ease because if you've chatted to a few of them, you would know, I would think, what the audience is like, and you're free to say whatever you like from then on.
Yeah, and I also think having a awareness with the audience and letting them into your circle means that you're buddies, and therefore that benefits the other comics on the bill.
Yeah,
I think if everyone's on board from the get-go, and you're we're just here to have a good time, people. We're gonna have some fun. We're gonna have some laughs. We're gonna have some bants. Just relax. We all know what we're doing.
Yeah,
and just have fun.
Exactly.
I think that benefits everyone on the bill.
Yeah, exactly. When I started writing the blog, I went on a half-day writing course, and the woman said, we can't remember who you were and why we invited you, because there was some other people who wanted to be reviewers. And I said, well, I'm not a reviewer, I'm not a diarist, I'm not a critique, and I'm not a reporter. I'm a member of the audience, and I'm out to have a good time. And so I always look at my blog regard it as an infuse. It's a praise for, as I said before, all the people that go out and actually perform. You're not there to see anybody else. You're there to see the comedians, and you're out to enjoy yourself. So you're right. You're out to have a fun night.
Yeah, I've been to gigs outside of London where people dress up, because obviously outside of London there may not be as many comedy gigs as there are inside of London, and people dress up and proper make this a night out, and they're just there to have fun, and you're okay, fine, we're going to entertain you, and that's I think that's the mentality you have to go in at a gig, is that everyone's just there to have fun, and we're all there to have a laugh.
My home city is Carlisle, and the comedy scene up there is really coming on. But you're right, that some of the audiences were quite formal. They would go out and make a night of it, and it was interesting to see. How do you remember all your stories when you're on stage? Do you think this comes from experience, or do you have pointers, or do you make notes?
So originally, I think most people when they're starting out, I used to have tag words on the back of my hand.
Right.
And sometimes I will still do that if I've got new material that I'm okay, that needs to go there.
Yes. Need to get this line in.
Yeah, tag words that are probably the best way for someone to remember a set. But as I mentioned earlier, I can't, even if I write out a joke, I can't remember it unless I practically do it.
Right.
So there's jokes that I've written which may be funny, but I don't remember any of them because I've never done them. I've got to actually practically do them.
Yeah.
In order for me to know that it feels comfortable. And even the other day, I was someone asked me about a really old joke that I did, and I couldn't and I was like, started at the beginning, and then I was like, oh, we're just continuing the joke because it's so ingrained in my body. It's like body memory.
Right.
So
it's interesting that though, isn't it, that you have to feel as though you have to perform it to get the best out of it.
Yeah, because I think with me as well, like I said, I'm not like the best writer. I think my comedy is emblemished.
Yeah.
That's probably not the best word. Again, I'm not good with words. Broadened. No, that's not even the best word.
Yeah. I know what you mean.
You know what I mean.
don't know what the word is myself, but I know what you're getting at. Yeah,
by my personality.
Yeah.
So I think
Broadened
even if a joke is, I think even if like I say a joke like flatly, I need to like perform it so I know this is what I'm going to do, because I'm also like a mover on stage. I can't just, like some people just stand there with a mic. I can't do that. I need to like be moving because I do have like energy on stage, and I want to like throw that out there that, hey, I'm throwing some energy at you. You're going to take it, and then you're going to throw it back at me.
I think that's a great thing, because if you move around, you're saying to the crowd, I'm going to make you all laugh, and you're not leaving until you're laughing.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it's a really good device to move around. Yeah. Do you prefer comparing to comedy routines?
Oh, it would depend on where I am at. It would depend on the venue or like the comedy club, to be honest. Like some places that I, before lockdown, had a regular MC spot at, like Angel, Comedy Virgins, Top Secret.
Yeah.
Was nice. But sometimes it's difficult because you're MCing when you want to get a set out.
Right.
Like being able to perfect a 15-minute set is difficult to do in comparing. And people have said to me, who have seen me like compare quite a lot, because obviously when I compare, I will drop in a joke, like a joke that I will do in a set, but I just can't do like a whole full set because I'm MCing. And people have said to me, oh, it's nice to see you do a set. And I'm like, but it's the same jokes that you've seen. It's just that they've just been broken up in an MC set. Because obviously as an MC, you're there.
Good way of doing it.
Yeah, you're just there all night, aren't you? So you're just like, let's just see if I can throw this joke in.
Yeah.
And I think I'm very good at like getting something out of someone and then linking it into a joke that I've got.
Yes, yeah.
But when people are like, oh, it's nice to see you do a set, and that was a really good set, I'm just like, you see me do those jokes. It's just that they've been separate. So I think it depends on where I am. And like sometimes you do feel like a lot of pressure because MCing, because it's your role.
I was just going to say, you are in control of the night, and you have to make sure the audience are warmed up enough to bring the acts on.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's quite a responsible job, and yet again, you do it well. When I've seen you do it, you're really engaging on stage. You come across really well and very positive. So it's a great thing to see. Do you have any ambitions as a comedian? Would you like to be on a chat show? Would you like to write a sitcom and anything like that?
I think there's like 3 things I would like to achieve in the next couple years. I like 4 things.
Right.
Yeah, 4 things. 4 things.
No higher.
It might increase. Yeah, it might increase. So the first one is to debut my show in Edinburgh. I was meant to do it this year, but obviously due to COVID, it doesn't look like it's going to happen.
I see, right, yeah.
So that's the first thing. The second thing is to perform live at Apollo.
Right.
I think that's a big, like, I think if you're on Live at Apollo, then you are seen as a comic.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the big things. And the other one is to be on Mock the Week.
Yeah.
I love that show, especially when Frankie Boy was on it.
Yeah,
so,
he was brilliant. Yeah.
And then get like either a sitcom or like a podcast or like a form show like Girl Code.
Yeah.
Like actually produced and put out there.
Yeah, yeah.
And then probably the last one, there is 5.
There's 5.
There's 5. The last one is I would love to do something as a comic related to wrestling.
Wow.
Not like telling wrestling jokes, but like I love wrestling so much. Like I've just spent the whole weekend watching wrestling. I was really tired. Like I've had 4 coffees. I've been up since till 5 a.m. just watching wrestling for the past 2 nights.
I never knew that. That's wonderful.
So I'm like a big wrestling fan. I love wrestling, and to be able to do something associated with wrestling, even if it's like hosting or presenting a show, would be such a big thing for me.
Wow.
Especially as a person of color and a woman, because women in wrestling, as like talking about it, is very, very rare. So being able to do that would mean like the world to me.
That's amazing, because as soon as you said wrestling, it reminded me of having my tea on a Saturday watching the wrestling on World of Sport in the 70s.
And then it moved on to ITV, didn't it? Yeah. Because I remember watching.
There was always wrestling on at tea time on a Saturday.
I remember that.
Also, as well, your wonderful ambitions. I was trying to work out whether or not you'd been to Edinburgh, but this was going to be your first debut show this last year. I go to Edinburgh every year for my holiday. And I go up there for a week and I see about 50 shows. So when Edinburgh is back, you're top of the list. I'm going to see that show there. That's one thing. I've been in the audience for Live at the Apollo. So and you will be great on that. And the other one, for Mock the Week and Live at the Apollo, how does the process work? Do you have to apply to be on them and then they will let you know? Or do you have to go for an audition? Or how does it work?
I think it's basically people who are on the radar of like industry.
Right.
Obviously, like producers who produce those shows often get in touch with agents or comics directly about whether they would be a good fit for shows. And obviously there is it's maybe not like an audition, but like you do go into like not actual shows but like warm-up gigs.
I see.
Or like for like Mock the Week kind of style panel shows or like other stuff, but it's like people know your work from like being associated with like writing or like performing at a certain thing. I did Jonathan Ross Comedy Club last year, which was a big thing.
Yeah, you were brilliant. Yeah,
which was a big thing for me. And then people obviously saw me on that. I saw like producers and like wanted to get in touch about talking about other projects. So like those kind of like domino effect will help someone's career and stuff like that. But like Edinburgh is like a big thing for like comics, especially up and coming comics, because they can obviously create a showcase for you. Like Lauren Patterson is a great example of that. Janine Harouni is another great example of that. How they can open up doors for you. Helen Bauer was nominated for it. So is Hughes Davies. It's just a great. Sophie Duker is another one. She's amazing. Those kind of people who I like worked with for several years and known as people in comedy over several years and who are good people and deserve all the success. Those kind of doors have opened because of like one thing that has like had a domino effect.
Yes, I see. Yeah. Well, it's going to be wonderful to see you there. As I say, when I go up, it really is. I've got every faith you're going to be absolutely wonderful up there. Who are your favourite comedians, past and present? Who makes you laugh?
People love to ask this question a lot, and I don't really have like a favorite comic.
Right.
I grew up watching a lot of British sitcoms.
Right.
So like, Nevermind, and like British, like, what's it called, like panel shows.
Oh,
obviously back in those days there wasn't as much as there was now, but like Nevermind the Buzzcocks was a big thing for me.
Yeah.
I used to watch Keeping Up Appearances. That was always on in the house.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
that's great.
Dinner Ladies.
Oh yeah, she was wonderful.
On
Victoria Wood.
Yeah, I used to watch a lot of like British sitcoms in the house.
Yeah.
So, and like stand up was never something. Like, obviously I knew Victoria Wood from Dinner Ladies, but I didn't know that she was a stand up.
Sure, yeah.
Same with like Eddie Izzard.
Yeah.
Like, I wasn't really associating that with stand up because I was quite young, but like then I got into like watching Def Jam comedy.
Brilliant.
When it was a big thing, and like seeing like Martin Lawrence and like all these American, like Bernie Mac.
Yeah.
All these American like sick, and obviously women, and again wasn't really featured in that show that much, but if they were smashing it. And it, obviously as a person of color watching it was like a big thing because obviously that was happening in America, and all we really had was Lenny Henry.
Yeah. Oh, that's the unfortunate.
So like those was kind of thing, and then recently it's just been Kevin Hart. I think he's naturally so funny. Like I've seen him on
brilliant.
I've seen him on like chat shows, just smashing it, just like not even like just trying to be funny. He's just naturally funny. He will open up his mouth and he's been funny. He'd be late to an interview. It was like, you never guess what happened. So there was a baby in the street, and I was just like, oh my god, like
he's away, he's off.
Yeah, and he was just like, he would just go on, and I was watching his interview. He was doing that for like 5 minutes, but it was hilarious.
Brilliant. Yeah. That's great. And like me, do you go to a lot of comedy gigs as a member of the audience, either as a comedian or before you were a comedian?
Before I was a comedian, I used to go to a lot of like urban comedy gigs. So I used to go and watch a lot of urban comedy gigs. There was a show that was in Cotton's, that was in Angel.
Right.
It was like a West Indian restaurant called Cotton's, and it was in Angel, and downstairs on a Wednesday they would do a comedy night, and that's when I met people like Booker T, Dane Baptiste. They used to come in there and trying out new jokes and new material.
Brilliant.
And I would go there with my friends, my two friends, every single week, well, like every other week. So we were there regularly, and we used to love that. And then as soon as I started like doing gigs, obviously I would go and support friends. Sometimes I would, especially when they were coming up to doing their like Edinburgh shows, I would go and watch their previews and stuff like that. But in the last couple of years, I haven't actually sat down and been an audience member because I have been so busy.
That's a great sign.
Well, not trying to boast, but like I generally, until like June last year, if I wasn't gigging in the evening, I was working in the pub.
Right.
And then I had a day job as well. So it was like
it's full on. There's a lot there. Yeah,
I would wake up, go to work, leave work, go to my day job, or go to the evening job, or go to a gig, and then I wouldn't get home until like 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning. And you're like, okay, that's 6 hours sleep. Let's get up and do it all again. And then like Sunday was like probably my only day off, and then I was like, tiring. That's sleep.
If you're on a comedy bill, do you stay and watch the other acts?
Yeah. Always. I like to. If I'm not doubling up, I would be there at the beginning of the show, and then I'll watch the show. It's number one, especially if you're on in the second section. It's good to see how the audience are reacting to other comics.
Yes, yeah.
You get to see how far you can go with comics, because sometimes you'll go to a comedy gig with a set in mind, be like, this is what I'm going to say, and then you're like, you get there and you're like, you realize the audience may not be on par. You're like, no, we're going to change that set. We're going to change it to something else. We're going to put that joke in instead of that one. So sometimes it's good to go watch the audience. Barry Ferns from Angel told me that's a very important thing to do.
Yeah.
He would just go, especially if he was emceeing, he would go and watch the audience, just in general. And I remember I do this quite a lot sometimes, that if I'm outside just chatting to like if I'm just outside just chilling and like some random person will just like talk to me at a comedy gig, I will talk to them and they're like, oh, what are you doing? I'm just like, I'm just here, just waiting for a friend.
We were waiting to go into the Stand Up for Women gig, and you were outside and we were chatting to you. It was
just chatting. I just like to chat. But also, people don't know that you're a comic.
Yeah.
Especially if you're emceeing that show. Yeah. It's hilarious. It's hilarious and I've done that several times. Yeah, I've done that several times at Angel, like Bill Murray, when I've just been like, I'm just here. I'm just gonna watch the show in a bit, and then you announce yourself on stage, and you're like,
that's brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just, I think it's good anyway, and also it's nice to see. I like, one thing I've missed during lockdown is being able to hang out with my comedy friends and just have a banter and just watch them smash sets. So it's nice to see other funny people, because people, obviously you asked me who's my favourite comedians. My favourite comedians are people that I watch nowadays, like Rosie Jones. I think it's absolutely hilarious. She's always commenting that the fact that I've got great tits, so that's always a bonus. Helen Bauer's absolutely hilarious. She's a beast on stage. I just love watching other comics, and just everyone's so different, and even
I can't get enough of it. 2020 and the start of 2021 has been really awful and a very strange year for everybody. Have you done many online gigs? How have you found them as opposed to live gigs? And what do you think the future is for live comedy?
I've done quite a lot of online shows. You would have known because you've been at most of them. No, I was quite lucky during the pandemic. That I have managed to gig. I have managed to gig online. I've done shows for Always Be Comedy. Obviously, Next Up, Leicester Comedy Festival, the Cavendish, they did online shows, so I did those. Just to support, like, obviously they're new acts nights, so I was just there as like doing new material as like, but it's just nice to support the Cav in general. I've done gigs for Funny Women, online shows that were obviously a bit weird, and no one obviously knew how long they were going to take, like how long, like we were going to be in that situation. But at the same time, comedy-wise, I think it's been good for me to do because it's broadened my audience. You being able to, especially with like me doing my Leicester Comedy Festival show, if I'd done it in person, it would just been people in Leicester. But people all over the UK purchase, and sometimes even outside of UK, purchase tickets to the show. So, and like doing a show like the COVID Arms and Always Be Comedy, James Gill has been a blessing to me during COVID.
Oh, he's amazing. He's
during lockdown, he's been an absolutely blessing. And I'm so thankful for him because he has basically like said, here's a gig, do a gig. It's my first gig, and he's just like, you know what, I'm just going to champion you right now. And his faith, especially with the cult, as I like to call them, Always Be Comedy.
Yes. I don't know how to answer that.
It's just been amazing.
It is like an amazing experience, live and online. That comedy club. I mean, from from my point of view, I would go to a live comedy night, and I would never sit in the front row. And after the first gig I went to 6 years ago at Always Be Comedy, my friend said, "Let's sit on the front row," and I've never looked back. And he takes the mickey out of me every week. It's wonderful. And certainly with the lockdown, with the online stuff, when it first started, there was no audio. So I would sit here laughing at four walls and nobody could hear me. And they then started to open the audio up, and I think they were the first to do this. And it meant that the comedians were good with the timing of the jokes, but they could also chat to the front row and hear the laughter with the timings and everything. But I go to Sean James's Happy Mondays. I'm going there tonight. I go to Jarlath Regan's Irishman Abroad gigs on a Friday night. Return of the Crake, or the Crack, or whatever it's called. I keep getting that word wrong. It's crack. It's Irish. They are very, very good. But to me, they're a super substitute. You know, I don't know what I would have done without them during the lockdown. But by God, I miss live comedy. Yeah,
but like, I think this is giving people a platform to like I say, reach a larger audience. If you look, like, I did Gigalist the other day, it's a great show, very, and like Catherine's done an amazing job with that show. Same with Always Be Comedy, the build up of audience.
I think when live comedy returns, there'll still be a live stream. There'll still be a live stream, because there's so many folk tune in who can't get to comedy clubs, and that's only good, you know. But
but also for comics who can't travel. Like, for example, I had never done. I think I only done one gig at Manchester, in person. Because it's quite far from me in London.
It's
and
a
also, like,
train ride, isn't it?
It's like a 2.5 hour train ride. The train rides, the actual train tickets are actually quite expensive to go to Manchester. And then the last train is like 10 o'clock, so you don't get home until like 2 o'clock or like 1 o'clock in the morning. And then I did the Frog and Bucket the other day, and that is it's just a great gig to be able to do to a club that you may not have been able to do in person.
It is. It's there are big advantages and disadvantages for both. Just before we go, and I've so enjoyed chatting to you, I really have. It's been wonderful. Is there anything else you'd like to say? Have you got any online gigs coming up? Are you writing? Where can folk find you on social media, that sort of thing?
Well, you can find me on Instagram, which is TwixChalk87. So it's, or you can, if you Google, or like, no, Google, if you type in the search Sikisa Comedy, it should pop up. Like I said, Twix is the name that I originally used to go by. I am Sikisa Comedy on Twitter, but I hardly use Twitter unless I've been ranting about wrestling at 5 o'clock in the morning.
I will never forget the wrestling references. I never knew that.
And I've got a website, so it's www.sikisacomedy.com, which is something I did during lockdown. Managed to get that done by a very good friend.
Very easy to navigate round.
Yeah, but I got a friend to do it for me, because I was like, now I got a friend who runs Swiss Chocolates production, or pictures, I should say, Swiss Chocolate pictures. I call him my comedy husband, Adrian Taus. So he does all my like videos and stuff for me, and those pictures that I took recently, he does those. He's great. He's just like really easy. I'm like, do my pictures for me. He's like, yeah. Do my website for me. I'm like, yeah, cool. So, but yeah, if you follow me on like probably the best one is like Instagram. Once live shows comes up properly, I will list my dates on. I have got bookings in for like Brighton. I'm doing a Brighton Fringe. I'm doing Camden Fringe. So I'm doing Girl Code as well at Camden Fringe. So that should be fun. But yeah, we're going to be bringing Girl Code back. So follow me on Instagram. There's a Girl Code Instagram as well. You just follow me. I'm around everywhere. Someone said to me the other day, you know, someone's doing well if they're not. If you're not even looking at their page, you're on everyone else's page. I'm like, thanks. I'm around. I'm like a cockroach. You can't get rid of me. I'm just around.
Well, I hope you stick around for a long, long time. I've thoroughly enjoyed, as I say, talking to you, and I'm looking forward very much to seeing you live again soon.
Yeah, it's been lovely to see you too.
Thank you so
you are
much.
such a great supportive person for comedy. We need more people like you, because obviously Save Live Comedy is a big thing. So keep supporting live comedians, because especially with like lockdown, we wasn't really seen as important.
Well, I try and do my best, and thank you so much for your kind words. It's been lovely. All the best to you, and thank you so much.
Thank you.